Hi, everybody. This is Dana, and welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast. I think it really is about just being honest with yourself, being honest with others. Looking back, if I'm to get really honest, I didn't want to stop drinking. I just wanted to drink like a normal person.
Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast. My name is Michael Lynn from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And I'm Lee McGinnis from Leesburg, Virginia.
As members of the recovery community, we created this podcast as a way to provide experience, strength, and hope through the lens of the Daily Reflection book. Each day, we interview members of the recovery community in the hope that their experience may provide inspiration.
We value inclusion and diversity, and we really want to provide a platform for all the voices of recovery. We aren't affiliated with any 12-step or recovery program, but you may hear these mentioned throughout the course of an interview.
Hey, before we get to the show, I'd like to ask a favor. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it'd be great if you could leave us a comment or a rating. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to help us expand our reach and improve the show.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
What's going on for today? Who's in the studio?
So today is April 18th, and we have Dana D. from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in with us this morning. I think you guys work together, do some service work together, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dana helps out on the CPC committee. Dana, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Lee and Michael. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this. Dana, we get this show started in the same way every day. We ask the guest to read the daily reflection for the day. Would you help us get started?
Absolutely. Okay, so the daily reflection for today, April 18th, is titled Self-Honesty. The deception of others is nearly always rooted in the deception of ourselves. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God, as Bill sees it, page 17. When I was drinking, I deceived myself about reality, rewriting it to what I wanted it to be. Deceiving others is a character defect, even if it is just stretching the truth a bit or cleaning up my motives so others would think well of me. My higher power can remove this character defect, but first I have to help myself become willing to receive that help by not practicing deception. I need to remember each day that deceiving myself about myself is setting myself up for failure or disappointment in life and in Alcoholics Anonymous. A close, honest relationship with a higher power is the only solid foundation I found for honesty with self and with others.
Wow, thanks for reading, Dana. That is a powerful read, and I can relate to a lot of it. Before we get started, what's your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is February 6th, 2019.
Wow. So as you read this, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
So I actually followed directions, and I went against every part of my being and didn't prepare for this too far in advance so that I could prevent myself from overthinking. I did know, the date was chosen for me, even though, if I had my way, I would have chosen a different date and just tried to control every outcome. But this date was chosen for me, and all I knew was the title of Self-Honesty. So I have done a lot of reflecting on that, and the timing of it was perfect because the year of 2021, I've been choosing a word for every month to focus on, and so far they've been choice, faith, March was action, and because I was just feeling really energized and inspired. And I did a lot of things in March, towards self-improvement. And at the end of the month, I kind of evaluated what worked and what didn't, what felt good, what didn't feel good. And before I read, for the beginning of April, I chose my word was motive. And because I realized that, I was taking all these actions in the month of March, and at the end of the month, I'm like, okay, well, why did I do those things? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And so obviously when I was, about 20 minutes beforehand, I was reading this for the first time, and I underlined, cleaning up my motives so others would think well of me. But yeah, I laughed out loud when I read cleaning up my motives because, it's no coincidence, right? That's what really stuck out to me. It loses me a little bit when it talks about deception because I don't necessarily think that I was deceiving others. I think that I was deceiving myself the most of all, not necessarily in a malicious way, but I think in a way to a self-preservation of sorts, in turn leads to the deception in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And praying for outcomes and situations. And even though you think you're praying or you're trying to pray for people, you're actually praying for the situational outcome that's going to benefit you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you deal with that and how you look at your motives. Are you using the program to do that? And if so, how?
So I think it really is about just being honest with yourself, being honest with others. You know, I had just recently celebrated 2 years, like I said, on February 6th. And this anniversary was a lot different than my first. My first, I definitely had a lot of struggle leading up to it, kind of that, stuck in the past this time last year kind of thing, where this year I struggled a little bit afterwards. I found myself kind of pulling away and really just feeling the need to regroup. What has kept me still here today is that I was honest about it. None of that sneakiness came in. I was still checking in with all the people. I was still being very open about, kind of what was working for me, what wasn't. And it really is that honesty with myself and with others that is helping me to keep on this track that I'm on, even if it has to change directions a little bit.
I love what you're saying, Dana, because what you're talking about is just sort of a constant self-assessment, which is what the program asks us to do. I mean, we do have a 4th step process, but I love the organic way that you're doing it, just kind of picking a theme for the month and then taking a look at that. And that is what the program promises us, is connection to self and awareness of self and learning how we are. And I went through the motive process also. My sponsor says, same behavior, different motive. Am I working out to earn a spot, or am I working out to be healthy? 2 different motives, same behavior. So I love what you're talking about. So do you just do this naturally in your day-to-day life? Or did you actually sit down and put pen to paper with the columns and all that in your inventory? Talk to us about the difference between the formal inventory and what you seem to be doing now.
Coming into the program, I had a very difficult start where it took me about 14 months to get a date to stick. And 10 months of that being, being in the rooms, quote unquote, working a program, 4 months being back out. And then coming back in, and I just really felt the need to take things kind of slow and steady. So I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of time under my belt before I got a sponsor, just because I had just such a difficult experience the first time with just constantly having to, fess up and just living that over and over and over again. It in turn took a toll on me. So when I came back in the second time, I just kind of took the slow and steady wins the race approach and got a sponsor and, very, very slowly started working the steps. So even though I just, celebrated 2 years, I am just now starting my 8th step. When I try to think about it, my 4th step was a little bit ago, my formal 4th step. But I definitely remember hearing kind of horror stories about it where, they're like, it took people out and all of this. And for me personally, it wasn't that big of a deal. I think if anything, I've always been self-aware, but in really, really, really analyzing it now, I don't know how honest and, or maybe how delusional some of that was. When I sat down and did my, formal pen to paper and all of that, it was, I don't want to say mediocre, but it was just very like even keeled. Even keeled is what I would like to say. Just, not too terrifying, but also no major relief from it. I would say more recently, it's something that I do on a daily basis just going along with trying to improve yourself and be a better person and be a contributing member of society, and all the things that I sold myself short on before, and just living up to my fullest potential and having the biggest impact I can on this world.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that you're having an impact. I really appreciate the work you do with the cooperation with the professional community. Before we go into the service and even down the track of the steps, I'm curious about what brought you into the rooms.
Like many of us, I knew that my drinking was an issue for quite some time. I was one of those people, though, that for the most part kept it together on the outside. Some of the things that were still happening on the outside, but the majority didn't know anything about what was happening on the inside. I got away with a lot of stuff for a very long time. And it wasn't until some of those external consequences caught up with the internal pain, it became very apparent that it was time to take some action, time to do something about it. But looking back on it now, I see that just because I went into the rooms, I would say the things and do some of the things. Looking back, if I'm to get really, really honest, I didn't want to stop drinking. I just wanted to drink like a normal person. And I think that was why it took me 14 months, like I mentioned, to get a date to stick, is because I didn't really want to get sober. I just wanted to be normal and drink normally. So I think a lot of people have that same struggle, like you don't want to admit defeat, even though, you've been so beaten down time and time again. We still come in fighting, and I fought for 14 months, and spiritually, it definitely took a toll on me.
So what's it like now for you? I hear that struggle, that spiritual struggle, but I see in front of me a calm person that's delivering a message pretty clearly. So how are the promises coming true for you in that sense of?
Looking back, I can't believe how I survived feeling so much pain every single day, day in and day out, especially towards the end. And, today, even though I still have so much I feel like I need to do and want to do, in terms of in all areas of my life, and just growing in general. On most days, there is a sense of peace, a sense of faith and trust. My higher power is God, and I'm very involved with my church. And that was, one of the things that I've been exploring, I'd say for the past couple of years, is getting involved with that fellowship as well. And it's been really powerful and helpful for me. I just recently spent a couple of days with family, and when I'm around them, I just kind of get out of my routine, and I feel like I don't pray as much. And, it's hard to not be distracted, and it's hard to hop on a meeting, and it's hard to, take some quiet time and read. And, even just a few days of that really, really like took me off my beam. And I was just thinking, I'm like, I can't believe I used to live my whole life like that. It was noticeable that I started to deteriorate in a sense, like my peace had been affected. And I'm just so grateful for the people that I have in my life now through my various fellowships, and, just the different players that God has brought into my life in order to bring me to the next level.
I'm curious about how your conception of God is changing through the process of recovery. Has it changed much?
So it's definitely changing. I definitely had always believed that there was something bigger than me. I grew up, I'm Methodist. That's what my mom told me that I was. But we didn't go to church. Religion wasn't really a part of our lives. And I'm actually really grateful for that, because I was able to kind of forge my own path in my adult life. So that was where I turned first, because I knew that I was struggling and I knew that I needed help. And so church was the first place I turned. I had always believed that there was something bigger than myself. I just had no idea what that actually meant. So it took me a few different tries to find where I currently go now, to find my people and my fellowship where I really fit in. And it's been since I've started there. I've joined some life groups. I just did this amazing international course called Alpha, and it was just really informative. And I'm very, I'm about 3 years into that journey and learning as much as I can, and, doing, like I said, life groups and Bible plans, and just trying to explore all of that. So it's definitely changing the relationship. I think also, you kind of go from that foxhole prayer to that, little kid with a Christmas list, to, thy will be done, please, more of a surrender prayer, more of a, please give me the strength and the grace and the guidance over, please give me this outcome. Although I still did pray for a really awesome podcast today. So.
Well, God delivers.
Prayer works. You said something that struck me as such a powerful thing to say, which is that you're glad you didn't have sort of a conception of your higher power as you were growing up, because it allowed you to forge that for yourself, which is so foundational to our recovery. And so for newcomers that might be listening, or maybe even people that are not necessarily here yet or not sure if they belong here, I'm curious what advice you would have for them specifically around this fear of like having to believe in something.
So I would say it's really about surrender. I would say to surrender, and to release that control, since it's an illusion anyway, and to really just have an open mind, because up until this point, what we were doing wasn't working anyway. So why not just have some faith and try something new?
Before we begin to wrap, I do want to ask you a little bit about how you got into the CPC committee, and how has that been for you in terms of service?
I learned about it from you, and it has been absolutely amazing. And like I mentioned, after I hit my 2-year anniversary, my program kind of changed a little bit, and I was really, really grateful for the service commitments that I had in place, because at least that still kept me, coming to some meetings, staying connected. And it's such a powerful service commitment for sure. I get so much out of it. It's such an incredibly important thing that we're doing, like bridging the gap between alcoholics and the medical community. And I've gotten such positive feedback from it. Yeah, I'm a very emotional person, and I'm all about feelings. And it just gives me all the warm and fuzzies when I get off of that Zoom call after a meeting, and it really feels like you've made a difference and made a really important connection.
I get emotional too, especially when you see, for folks that are wondering what we're talking about, CPC, we escort medical students to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous so that they can understand and see what AA is about, what it is, what it isn't, and to see the spark in a medical student's face when they see a real alcoholic, and they see that it's not somebody in a trench coat with under a bridge or whatever, and they actually see what AA is all about. You can't explain the feeling about that. So yeah, truly appreciate your work there. So as we wrap, is there anything else you'd really like the listeners to know?
I guess I'll go back to my word of action. I think that, and also for me just being here today, I am equally honored and terrified to do this. And I definitely stalled on the form because the one question was, why do you want to participate in this podcast? And my answer was, I don't. I don't want to do this. And finally I typed in, to overcome my fear of being on a podcast. And so, it's definitely an action that I took that I'm proud that I took. And, I'm proud that, one step in front of the other, doing something to overcome a fear. And I'd say that, most people listening today have taken a lot of regrettable actions to get to this place. And my biggest piece of advice is to forgive yourself. Life is fragile and it could end tomorrow. So do something today you're proud of.
Beautiful. I want to thank you for your courage. I know you're scared. You did such a beautiful job. And this is what we do. We step out of our comfort zone, and that's where the magic happens. And I think a lot of magic happened here today. I want to thank you for stepping up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening. If you want to find us online, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Daily Reflector. You can read stories of recovery from our community at blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. Please don't forget to give us a rating on your podcast app. We greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.